There's a space in the story of Easter that means a lot to you and me as grieving moms. We often talk about the cross and we talk about the resurrection, but we leave out the space in between those two moments. The space where everything goes quiet, where nothing makes sense, where what you hoped would happen didn't, and what you're left holding feels heavy and unresolved. And for many of us as grieving moms, this is the space that we live in the messy middle of it all, where heaven feels silent and you don't know what God is doing. This is part 4 of a 5-part Easter series, and this is your host, Teresa Davis. Today, you and I are going to step into that space together. If you're grieving the death of your child and you want the steps that lead to believing with confidence that life is still worth living, then you're in the right place. Hello, I'm Teresa, a grief mentor. That's been where you are, and I teach grieving moms like you how to navigate life after child loss. If you're ready to take a step of courage and build a solid foundation to live with hope and purpose, then I'm here to teach you how. Are you ready for what God has for you? Then I'm ready to teach you. Before we go any further, I want to say this. If you ever felt like God has gone quiet, like your prayers aren't being answered, or you're sitting in something that you completely do not understand, it can feel incredibly isolating. I know, because I've been there too. I understand that incredible amount of confusion that comes when our children die. That's why I created the Grief Mentor Sessions. Because sometimes what we need most is someone to sit in that silence with us, where we can process it and begin to see where God is meeting you in it. I've added visuals to the Grief Mentor Sessions because I've discovered, to the heart of a grieving mom, seeing it mapped out visually in front of her often brings an aha moment. Hearing the truth is validating, but seeing the truth is transformational. I invite you to join me if that is something that you feel like would help you process your journey exactly where you are right now. You can visit my website at thegriefmentor.com and make your appointment today. Our dog is 15 years old. He's been with us through the grief of Andrew's death. In fact, he was Andrew's dog before he was ours. When Andrew was flight instructing in Arizona, he was homesick, very homesick. And Erica, his bride-to-be, was still in college. And she found a dog that she thought would be perfect to ease his loneliness from being away from us and being separated from her. Once he moved back to this area, he lived in Muncie, Indiana. And due to the travel requirements for his job at the time, he was flying just about every weekend. And that meant the dog going to the kennel frequently. Well, the rest is history. He became our little buddy. And he loves to walk. His heart is always so willing. The moment I put my shoes on and reach for that leash, he gets so excited. He is dancing around like he's a teenager. He's ready to go. But his body doesn't always keep up with what his heart desires. He has arthritis in his hips, so the longer we walk, the more it starts to wear on him. And today, on the last stretch of our walk, we weren't that far from home, but we were still walking in the opposite direction of home. And I could see it in him. He started to slow down. Step by step, it was getting heavier for him. His little head dropped, his pace changed, and I could feel what was happening in him. That moment where the journey starts to feel like too much. His little head kept getting closer to the ground the further we walked. It's that place where what is right in front of us feels overwhelming, when the body is tired and your heart is starting to question if you can keep going. Sometimes when he gets like that, he'll take his nose and nudge my leg as if he's saying, "Come on, it's time to go home. I can't do this. It's too hard." And I just kept encouraging him. "We're almost there, little buddy. Just a little further. You can do it." And then we turned the corner. He couldn't see home yet, but he knew this was the way home. And everything about him changed. His little head perked up, his pace changed, and his little ears went back, and all of a sudden, he had some new energy. Nothing about the distance had changed, though. Nothing about his body and the pain that he was feeling in his hips and legs had changed. But his perspective changed. He was no longer walking into the unknown, where taking one more step felt like too much to bear. Instead, he was walking toward home. And friend, that is what Saturday can feel like in grief. Before the turn, before you can see anything ahead, when all you feel is the weight of the journey and how far you still have to go to see your child. Scripture shows us a moment like this in Jesus' story. Luke 23:50-56 said, Jesus had died. He had been taken down from the cross and placed in a tomb. All who stood at the foot of the cross that day went home. Some of those who were among the bystanders were his mom, Mary Magdalene, and John the Beloved. There was no resolution in that moment. No visible movement from God. Just quiet. Scripture tells us just before Jesus' death that at noon, darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. That means, friend, it was dark for 3 hours. Then at 3 o'clock, Jesus called out with a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Even Jesus experienced that moment, not because he didn't trust the Father, but because he was fully entering into the weight of what sin and death carry. Jesus knew great pain and suffering, both physical and emotional, in his life, but he never knew separation from his Father. Now he knew it. There was a significant sense in which Jesus rightly felt forsaken by God the Father in this moment. The feeling of silence, the feeling of distance, the feeling of, where are you, Lord? The loneliness of grief, just like you and just like me. Remember, he took on flesh and blood for the purpose of dying, so that he could understand what it was like to be us. But the story doesn't end there, friend. And here's what we need to understand. Jesus had already told his disciples something was coming. He told them that he would raise the temple in 3 days, but they didn't get it. They couldn't understand it. They couldn't connect the dots of what he was talking about. It was unheard of. What did he even mean that he would raise the temple in 3 days? Can't you just see their faces of confusion and disbelief that the man that they spent 3 years with, who was full of wisdom and power, who did miracle after miracle, was not able to prevent his own death? They were so confused and they were scared that someone would recognize them as those that had been with Jesus. Friday was finally over. But what now? They were sitting in Saturday, confused, full of grief, doubts, fears, not fully understanding what the future held. And that's just where we are as grieving moms, aren't we? We've read the promises. We know what Scripture says. But when our child dies, what we experience feels very, very different. And this is the tension, friend. And this is the tension, friend. Silence can feel like absence, but it's not the same thing. God was not absent on Saturday. He was working in a way that they could not see yet. Just like our little buddy Hunter on that walk, the journey didn't change when we turned the corner. He still had the same distance to walk. He still had the same pain in his body. He couldn't see the house yet. But something in him shifted. Not because he could see home, but because he knew he was on the path that led home. All of a sudden, what felt overwhelming just moments before felt possible again. He lifted his little head. His pace changed. Not because the journey got easier, but because he knew together we were walking toward home. And friend, that's the shift in Saturday. Not that everything suddenly makes sense in our grief journeys or that the pain disappears. Not that you can even see the full picture of what God is doing in your life. But that somewhere deep in your spirit, you begin to see a path that leads home. You begin to realize that God has not left you here. This is not the end of your story. And even though you can't see what's ahead, you're walking on a path that He is lighting up step by step that leads to somewhere good. Because of what Jesus has already done, this road that you're on, this road that leads home, does not lead to despair. It leads to life. It leads to restoration. It leads to a place where what feels broken now will not always feel that way. It doesn't make Saturday easy, but it does make it possible. Because you're just not walking through grief. You're walking towards something that has already been secured for you, and that is life with Jesus and your child. And the best part of that is that you don't have to wait until you get to heaven to experience it. Because we have a promise in Psalms 27:13 that says, "Yet I am confident that I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living." And friend, at the end of that promise is a reunion beyond all reunions. If you feel like that you are in that space right now where everything feels quiet, where the weight feels heavy, and you don't know how much further you can go, I want you to know this. What Jesus did on the cross was finished. The debt was paid, sin was defeated, and death lost its authority to separate you from God and to separate your child from God. What you're living in right now, the space of silence, the space of grief, the space where everything feels so confusing and unresolved, it is not the end of your story. Because what was finished on that cross is about to be revealed in a way that no one expected. And the people who loved Him, the ones who stood with Him at the foot of the cross, they couldn't see it yet either. They were walking through the quiet, the confusion, the heartbreak, just like you. And friend, you're right about something. You're walking a road where your child is no longer walking beside you, and that's real, and it's painful, and it matters. But this road that you're on does not end in separation. Oh, please hear me, friend. Because of what Jesus has already finished, this silence is not permanent. Your grief is not the end. And death does not get to define how your story ends. In this next episode, we're going to step into the moment that changed everything. The moment death lost. And until then, if your head feels down, if your steps feel heavy, if the journey feels like too much, friend, you don't have to rush this space. You don't have to have it all figured out. Because even in the silence, God is still writing your story. That death can never stop. And that's all I have for you today. So until next time, take care.